Okay, excellent. Well, Praveen, Srinivas, we'll go ahead and get started. So all that have joined us, happy Thursday. Welcome to today's webinar, Supply Chain Visualized, Driving Business Insight with Redshift and Oracle, as we continue on with our series, The Modern BI Journey. I'm Audrey Eloquin, AWS Alliance Manager at Apps Associates, and I'm fortunate to be joined today by Srinivas Pathareddy, our VP of Analytics, and Praveen Charuvu, our Director of Analytics here at Apps Associates. Thank you again for joining us and taking the time this afternoon. Like last week, I'd like to walk through a few house rules. Our session will be recorded and your lines are on mute, but throughout the session, do feel free to submit questions into the chat window and we'll address them at the end of the discussion, time permitting. And other than that, I'd like to go ahead and dive into the agenda and then turn it over to Srinivas. So today's session narrows our focus on supply chain. Srinivas will walk us through typical challenges in supply chain management and how tools like AWS's Redshift and QuickSight provide a framework for supply chain data analytics. Praveen will then walk us through a demo of how we can use these tools specific to supply chain management. And we'll end today's webinar with a Q&A and closing remarks. So apart from that, consistent with the series and looking forward to rolling the first leads and diving into the supply chain bit more. So Srinivas, thank you very much, and over to you.
Thanks, Audrey. Thanks. This is Srinivas Pathareddy from Apps Associates. Today, as Audrey mentioned, we're going to talk about a supply chain use case. And we're going to see how we can solve a typical use case using AWS Redshift and QuickSight. Now, the agenda is going to be like, we'll start with a quick introduction to Apps Associates, followed by the typical supply chain challenges that we see in the environment today that we are in. We'll also walk through some of the standard Oracle reports. I've picked a few of them. And from Cloud ERP applications, we'll look at those and we'll talk about the limitations of standard Oracle reports. And then we'll get into the solution that we think would help into the visibility that we think is needed for supply chain, followed by a brief demo, which is going to talk about how we can use AWS Redshift and QuickSight to put the solution together. Quick introduction for Apps Associates. Apps Associates was founded in 2002. It's headquartered in Acton, Massachusetts. It has locations in US, multiple locations in US, Europe, and India. And that around 300 active customers at this point, and then around 900 full-time employees supporting all of these customers. We are very active. We're very focused in implementing business applications, Oracle on-premise, Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, and provide integration services that help in integrating applications, whether it is between Oracle or Salesforce. And then end-to-end analytics solutions, all the way from building warehouses, data lakes, front-end applications, business intelligence tools. And then cloud, followed by cloud service and application and infrastructure managed services. So these take care of both infrastructure managed services and application managed services on a month-to-month basis, so that it kind of runs smoothly. We're very actively involved in the partner network, and as you can see, we have active partnership with AWS, Oracle, and Salesforce, very actively involved in developing the partnership and helping business move forward. A quick background as far as why we're talking about this webinar with respect to Oracle. As I mentioned, the company was founded way back when, purely focused on implementing Oracle applications, Oracle on-premise, a business suite, followed by cloud applications in the ERP, supply chain, HCM, human capital management, EPM solutions. And with that knowledge, we've been taking that knowledge and implementing enterprise warehouses for our customers. And the knowledge of the data, the knowledge of the business process that our employees have, our consultants have enabled us to help customers implement solutions much more effectively. Because this having knowledge to the data and how data can be used, along with the business process, has made it possible for us to recommend solutions to our customers and come up with designs that are more effective for our customers' use. So today, as I mentioned, we'll talk about a supply chain use case. And before we start, we will start with the problem statement and the typical challenges that customers have been facing. Now, if you look at today's environment, there is a lot of demand in certain areas, primarily in the consumable areas, whether it's in the home consumables or the medical consumable divisions across the industry, across the country. And there is increased demand for some of these items. However, so for some of the other items, there has been fairly inconsistent demand, or in some cases, pretty low demand. And some of these include capital equipment, so very inconsistent demand that we see at this point. So the nature of business has kind of changed significantly, and and it has resulted in a very skewed demand pattern that we see, where some items are heavily in demand and some are not. And as a result, what's happening is traditional metrics like inventory turns, days on hand, are getting challenged. These metrics were kind of used to evaluate what is how much stock do I need to maintain in my inventory, how fast do I need to replenish them. So all of these were metrics that were used periodically, and these were used to set the criteria to identify, depending on how they go up and down. They used to set the criteria as far as whether you were low in demand or you were low in stock or high in stock, and those were setting the trends as far as how you manage your inventory. But with the nature of demand that we see today, these metrics are getting less relevant, and as a result, what's happening is we are seeing challenges in fulfilling orders. So there are areas, I think we have all experienced this over the last few months, where where customers have, some cases have seen products not available, or in other cases, significant delays in procuring the products. Now, and so if you're in the customer service division for an organization and you're trying to fulfill all of those orders, and so one of the key concerns would be, if you're getting a sales order, then how quickly can you turn it around and send it to the customer? And if the customer service doesn't have that visibility, whether it depends on whether it is quantity on stock, or whether it is being procured from the supplier, or whether it is being made or is manufactured within the organization. So having the visibility and also knowing when it is going to be available is going to help in customer satisfaction. Now, another key hurdle that we have seen is the movement of goods and services have been significantly also impacted as part of this. So restrictions have been placed in different industries, and as a result, this has impacted how suppliers, how we can procure products from raw materials from our suppliers, or finished goods from our suppliers, and how you can use that to project and to provide that visibility into when goods will be available and when they can be shipped out. So all of this has resulted in some cases excess inventory, and other cases it has resulted in having no stock at all. So, and the reason for this is you have data. Typically for a supply chain system, you have data that is sourced from multiple different systems, right? All the way from, you have different order capture systems to most customers have multiple order capture systems that are maintained. And along with that, a forecasting application that is sales forecasting that is sourced from a demand, for a demand planning system together, which forms the total demand that needs to be fulfilled. And then on the supply side, you have open requisitions, open purchase orders that need to be fulfilled, either in some cases need to be approved and sent to the supplier. You have goods that are in transit that are being either shipped from overseas or different regions from the country, and that you need to know when they can be scheduled and when they would be arriving. And then having a good idea of inventory management, that means primarily around stock on hand, inventory balances, is important as part of this data set. And then finally, understanding what are the jobs that are outstanding, what is the schedule that for production completion of those work orders that are out there that can help us estimate the finished goods that we would receive. So all of this, I mean, as you can see, the different sources of information, and in order for anyone to have a good handle of this, I mean, it would mean integrating all of the sources, providing views, or providing snapshots, providing data sets that would really help in making decisions as far as, or in the other sense, help us in identifying gaps in the supply chain process. So what we look at is, so keeping that in mind, we want to just take a few minutes to understand what comes out of Oracle Cloud ERP. So there are a number of reports. I've listed a few key ones that are relevant for the discussion today. And as you can see, I mean, the number of reports that provide the data sets that we need. However, in many cases, in order to obtain meaningful insights into the data, we would have to combine the diverse data sets manually, take it download the extracts into Excel spreadsheets, merge them, and then put in manual formulas in spreadsheets to kind of get those insights. So as a result, the flexibility for data analysis is limited. And also and then also the gaps, identifying any gaps in this process also becomes difficult because it's pretty manual. But as you can see, I mean, there are I mean, as far as the information, because information is sourced from ERP systems, which is the primary source for collecting all this information, you would see that there is a lot of information that is maintained, and that most of this information is very useful, right? However, they're pretty operational in use. They provide data sets by for a specific purpose. So say, for example, on the procurement side, you would have information related to everything that's either being received or in the process of being received. And or in addition to that, you would also have open purchase orders or open recs that have to be fulfilled. You would get details about the spend that you have already incurred, either whether it's by item category or supplier, and then having information about unprocessed requisitions that need to be either approved or fulfilled. And then also understanding what are the delays that you have in the procurement process, like supplier shipments that have been overdue and then you still haven't received on time. And then if you look at on the inventory side, inventory, obviously you have the on-hand balance that is available. Inventory turns, we talked about it, and how we still have challenges using that in today's environment. And then the work order schedules, which help us understand when the work orders would be completed and when we would have the completed finished goods available in stock. Now, on the order management side, you have details on the sales orders. You have details on any fulfillment or shipments that are delayed as part of this process. And in supply chain, you have details on the forecast that has been created. And also, I mean, a lot of information with respect to like what if you're especially when you're trying to build when you try to build finished goods, understanding the different supply and demand for the different components, in order to complete an item, a finished good, is also important to understand. And then ultimately, understanding the build plan and the details as far as, okay, what items need to be pegged to each of these finished goods, what component items is needed for each of those finished goods. So as you look at it, there is a lot of information that is captured and that is available in the form of reporting. However, these are pretty siloed. These are pretty these are extracts that you can run for individual data sets, and in order for us to address the key challenges, I think we still find it lacking. So what do we have how do we solve this? How do we solve this problem, and what kind of solution can we talk about? So the solution is more about how do we integrate all of these together. So we talked about the different data sources, whether it is manufacturing or inventory or shipping or receiving, and then all of these have key metrics that are associated to it, and all of these metrics these key metrics need to be integrated. There's create integrated business areas that can help us identify what the ultimate goal is going to be. That is two things, right? One is provide that visibility, and then after that, identifying the gaps if they exist. Now, in order to do that, I mean, we need to understand what are the different source areas. We talked about it briefly about it, and we said from a demand, we just need to look at it from both a demand and a supply point of view. On the demand side of it, you have, as I mentioned, you have order management systems and you have forecasting systems that provide the demand for it, everything that you need that would be fed into the supply chain systems from a demand point of view. And on the supply side of it, there is, I mean, you have whether it is open POs or in transit or the receipts that are scheduled, and then work orders that have to be completed that are maintained, that are going to be completed in the manufacturing system. And then on-hand stock, so what you have as far as stock that can be used for immediate shipment. So a lot of these systems have to be used together. And how do we? And what are the things that we can build in order to after we extract data from these systems, right? So a typical solution that would be really useful that we have kind of implemented at other customers and we think is going to serve the need here is, I think we understand what the challenges are, but then if you look at what is typically needed. Many organizations that are actually making and selling products. I mean, you need to understand, you need to have an idea of as far as what your inventory projection is going to look like for the next few weeks, for the next few months. So this would mean multiple components. You need to know both from a demand point of view and also from a supply point of view. So demand and so we talked about the demand, okay, understanding what your projection of your forecast and your bookings look like. And then on the supply side of it, what are your work order completions? How much stock do you have? What is the projection for that? And then how much of open POs do you have that would be shipped by the suppliers? Open requisition and transit. So all of these would form into the supply side of it. And how do you use this information and have an inventory projection for the next 6 months? I think this is something that has been really useful in helping customers understand whether if you're getting a sales, or if you're getting an order that is booked from a customer, how much time is it going to take in order to fulfill that requirement? So having that information, we would be able to predict what would be the approximate delivery dates and that we would be able to ship these products to the customer. And then after doing that analysis, would there be any shipments that would be delayed and we would be missing the scheduled dates or going beyond what has been scheduled? So projecting that from a customer service point of view, projecting those delivery dates and planning for customer shipments would be kind of almost impossible if you're not aware of what your projections are looking like, right? And if you're looking at projections and if you see that, I mean, there are like if you have projections for your requisitions and your and open POs, and if those are not meeting the needs of what you have to either ship to the customers or make, I mean, you have to identify what your risks are associated to the suppliers and what is the risk in the procurement process. And does it mean that we have to look at alternate suppliers as part of this process? So understanding the risk and helping and using information that can help you look at other supply relationship is an important part of this whole exercise that can help you prevent hurdles, so that any hurdle that you have, whether it is related to shipping to our customers or even fulfilling or completing the work orders by making sure that you procure the raw materials on time and eliminating any production delays that you have. Now, in order to do this, you also have to understand, you also have to make sure that the forecast accuracy is properly calculated. The forecast accuracy that is generated from the demand planning system is accurate enough to help in the entire production scheduling process, right? And then understanding the fill rate, percentage of how much has been filled compared to the forecast is also needed in order to make sure that the production scheduling is done appropriately. So all of this together I mean, if you look at it, it's more about making sure that your projections, or whether it is anything to project for your stock on hand, or estimating your customer shipments is visible to you, so that you can plan accordingly. You can plan to plan for addressing any of the shortfalls and have and then plan for some mitigations as well. Now, what are the benefits, right? The benefits that we see, as I mentioned, where we have more information that is available to us. We know when whether there are risks for certain products, whether we have overcapacity for some other products, and then developing, and especially in this when there's a lot of conversation about supply chain, the conversation is around reducing the risk of in the supply chain process itself. So that would mean looking at alternate suppliers, both whether it is sourcing from different other countries, or sourcing within the country, and different options of eliminating the risk by making or by kind of sourcing them by companies that are making it within the country itself domestically. Right, and together, I think this would help in making sure that inventory is managed accordingly, and not get to a stage where you have really peaks of where you have a lot of stock for certain products, and then you're really running out of stock for other products. And ultimately, what is important for us is to make sure that the customer service is maintained. That means essentially what is important is the customer delivery, on-time delivery for the customer, and the customer retention is a big factor in making sure that the organization survives. So all of this together are important benefits that we see. And then the only thing, I mean, the reason we're talking about this solution is because in order to collect all this information from the different system, it's typically very difficult to kind of put this together in a ERP system, because the purpose of an ERP system is primarily to capture and generate operational data, and it requires aggregating data from across different data sources, aggregating based on formulas that are relevant for your calculations, and all of this needs a processing outside of an Oracle ERP system, and that can be done elsewhere. So based on the volume of data that is generated here, what we think is what we have seen is having this sourced into having this fed into an AWS environment with Redshift typically helps so capturing this information and helps with performance in order to generate the necessary metrics. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how we approach this from an AWS framework point of view, and what we think is one of the approaches that we are going to talk about. We'll talk about at a high level, and then we will use that same approach to go through the demo as well. Now, if you look at it, there are multiple ways of extracting information and how do you store information in an environment. And what we have seen is having in our AWS environment, having data sourced from different sources typically would mean that you would need to collect this information in a staging area, or what we call as a raw bucket. So we use that to store all the information into an S3 bucket. Now, all of this information needs to be, it's very helpful if you get all this information, the source information as is, into the S3 bucket. So that provides users the ability to access the source of information directly, so that they are able to not only look at information that is provided already in the form of reports, but they're looking at other attributes, other sets of information that they can use for generating insights. So the curated information is enabling that process where users are able to kind of go and look into this detailed information, and the detailed information is collected from the different sources that I mentioned here. And then finally, all this information is transformed into the third bucket, which is primarily meant for like whether it's transformed to generate KPIs that have been identified, transformed to help generate certain reports or dashboards that need to be that can be executed for distribution. So this approach of making sure that you're capturing all the detailed source information primarily at the front end, and then providing that access to the user, making that accessible to the user, helps them generate more insights than what you would typically provide them based on the transformed information, right? So this is something that we have followed and customers have really benefited from this approach compared to just transforming everything and having information just shown as consumable reports. And then just to take an example before we jump into the demo, I mean, just if you look at this example, this is just talking about a sales delivery data set, and it's taking different, it's sourcing information from different systems, from a cloud ERP system and an on-premise EBS system. We're taking all of this information into a raw bucket and a raw S3 bucket, followed by transforming it into Redshift, and then moving it back into S3 for easy access and for sharing it with other external vendors as well. So this approach of how we extract information, how we collect together, we'll kind of go through, as I mentioned, a brief demo. And as part of this demo, we have we have collected this information in order to kind of make it brief. We have done some of the pre-processing ahead of time, so that that is getting this information from the different disparate systems and aggregating it. So we've done the pre-work so that we can look at how information can be loaded into Redshift, and how we can use QuickSight in order to develop some quick dashboards as well. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to invite Praveen into the discussion so that he can help us walk through into how data is being extracted and loaded into Redshift, and then using QuickSight in order to generate these dashboards. Praveen.
Thanks, Srinivas. Thanks for that. So as Srinivas highlighted, I think we're going to look at a problem statement over here. So we've already extracted the supply chain data and the demand and supply data over here. So we are actually going across the same problem statement which Srinivas mentioned about fulfilling orders and looking at the sales orders, how the data is, right? So here what we have done is I would just want to showcase one of the sample data set that is available here for a specific month. And what you would see is you would certainly see data by customer, by different org, category, item, and different elements which we're looking for, which are more needed from an analysis standpoint. So in this case, you're looking at what are my open orders, how much is my order quantity, what is my amount, right? So general scenarios, cases over here. So what we are going to do is we have around six months worth of data over here, and you can see that there are pretty huge files over here, and we have actually zipped it to make sure that I think from as part of this use case, we are actually showcasing the value add over here. And on top of that, we also have a zip file of the supply and demand, which we are going to utilize. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to connect to my SQL developer where I have a pre-scripted version over here, and my Redshift instance is available, and I've just connected to that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to load my sales data, and then I'm going to load the supply and demand. So just to make sure I'm starting with a clean slate, I'm just dropping the table, whatever it is there. I'm just creating a fresh sales order table with my structure, whatever I'm looking for. Similarly, I'm actually dropping my supply and demand table, and I'm just loading, creating the table. So what I'm going to do is the next step is I'm going to load my files into an S3 bucket. So I'm actually already connected. I'm using an application over here where I'm connected to my environment, the S3 bucket, and there's a folder called CSV files, and you can see that there's no sales data. This is the latest data. I'm just going to upload my files, and the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just sort it by the type, and I'm just uploading all the gzip files that I have. And you could say it would take around maybe 10 to 15 seconds to just load it. So you can see that all my files are loaded. So I have 6 months of sales data, and then 1 month of supply and demand, or maybe 6 months of supply and demand, but it's projection data already available where I'm going to utilize that. So now I have the files. Let me also connect to my S3 console just to make sure that I've actually connected to the right Redshift environment, make sure that it's in the right folder. So I'm connected to the CSV folder over here. I'm just refreshing it, and you can see that the files are available over here. So I have the supply and demand, the sales order files, so all the files are here. I've just uploaded right now, so you can see that the time frame matches to this. So I feel that I'm in the right place. So I'm going to go back to my SQL developer. And so what I'm doing over here is I have the files in my S3. I'm just loading that using a copy command into my S3 bucket. So I'm loading it from into this table, sales order table, which I just created, and I'm specifying the path and everything, and I'm just loading that. So you can see that there are around 5 or 6 months of data. So let's see like how much data volume that it's going to load. Certainly based on the raw files, each of the file is 100 megs, but we have zipped it to 10 or 12 megs. And you can see that we have loaded close to 5.5 million, right? Close to 5 million records. And let's also do the supply and demand data set. And it took like maybe, I think to load the sales order data, it took like maybe hardly 15 or 20 seconds. So I'm just verifying, doing some sanity checks before even going to QuickSight, do some analysis, right? Just doing some sanity checks. So I can certainly see that there's a 5 million records, and you can see that it's pretty quick. I'm not doing anything, haven't even tuned anything. So here, what I'm doing is I'm just looking at the current month data set to make sure that I'm actually looking at, because in order to fulfill the problem statement, I need to look at the current data set rather than the past. So I'm just looking at the current month, making sure that I'm able to fulfill them. I'm not, there's no delay in that. So I'm just trying to check. And you can see that immediately by different orgs, my quantity is coming across, ordered quantity is coming across, and the number of records that are there. So I feel comfortable with the data. So let me just quickly jump onto the QuickSight application. So here, what we are going to do is, because I'm already connected to AWS Management Console, you can either type in QuickSight over here like this and click on that, or you could just scroll down, and in the analytics section, you should see a QuickSight application over here. So let me just click on that. So it opens a new QuickSight tab, and the first time that you log in, what happens is you don't actually see this screen. You would actually have to go through some kind of configuration where you have to specify, okay, what is the account where this has to be created, the billing details and all of that. So it's a little bit different. So you need to go through that, and then you would come across here. But because I've already pre-configured, I'm not going to go through all of that. I'm already in my dashboard. So what we're going to do is we have loaded the sample data set, right? So I want to first utilize that into my QuickSight application. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on Manage Data. And here there are already some data sets. I'm not going to touch any of that, but I'm going to create a new data set which I've just loaded, right? So I'm going to click on the new data set. And you can see that there are different sources which the QuickSight can directly connect. You can actually utilize the CSV files which are their raw format. You can directly use them, or connect directly to Salesforce, or directly to an S3 bucket which is there, or to the Redshift instances. And there are other applications like SQL Server, MySQL, Snowflake, Data Warehouse, all of that. It's available. But because in this case, I've already preloaded the data into Redshift application, I'm going to use Redshift. But because I've already pre-configured my data source, so you can see that there is a data source that comes in. Once you configure it, I don't need to go through the configuration process. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to utilize this. So let me click on that, and so this is the data set that is there. I'm saying create data set, and what it is doing is it's actually going to show me all the different schemas that are available within the data set. So in this case, because at the time of creation, I specifically said, okay, create in the public schema. So I'm just going to the public schema, and here it just pulled out all the list of tables that are there, or objects. I'm just going to scroll down to first import my sales table. So there is a sales order slab. So that's what I've just created. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to preview it just to see how the data looks like, right? So I'm just clicking on that. And it should take like a couple of seconds to just refresh the data. And you can see that there's a sample data that has been brought over here. I'm not going to change anything, just go with the standard approach. But I'm going to talk about two things. So you can see that on the left side, there are two different options. One is the query mode and one is the spice mode. So basically the spice mode is kind of in memory. So you're just extracting the data, loading it ahead of time, and it is much faster because the data is already prefetched. Whereas the direct query is at the time of report creation or analysis creation, we're actually executing it. So in this case, I just want to go with the direct query approach. Let me just rename this as sales order dataset. And immediately what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this save and visualize, which will take me to the analysis screen where I'm going to actually start building my report, right? My analysis, and then look at that. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I want to look at my orders, right? Look at my orders, how much quantity I really need. So I'm going to focus on that, maybe for a specific organization, right? So let me just focus on that. So for that, I'm going to pick a graph, maybe a bar, vertical bar, just to keep it simple so that I look at the data. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my order quantity, which is what I needed. And maybe I would select order quantity by item. So here what it's doing is it's going to just prefetch the data, right? So I have different items over here. Let me just filter for a specific org. So I'm just going to filter on the org. And here I'm going to restrict for a specific org. So it's again fetching the data from the Redshift instance real time as I'm curating, like a query. It's actually fetching the data. So it should take like a couple of seconds. So yeah, it's there. So I'm going to restrict this to US1 business unit. And the next thing that I'm going to do is because I want to focus purely on the current month, right? So let me just filter on a week. And here I'm going to just filter saying that after maybe 1st of July. So anything, or maybe after 30th of June. So anything after 30th June, just show me that. So you can see that these are my orders, and you can see that there's a quantity that's against that. So there's a different quantities that is available. So let me just rephrase this as maybe order quantity by item, right? And in brackets, I'm going to say current month, so that I know that, okay, this is my current month fulfilling, right? So at the same time, what I'm going to do is I want to look at another data set, look at what is my order quantity by organizations, just a different perspective, how it is fulfilling again for the same period, right? So the first thing that I'm going to do is because I know I have specified a criteria, I'm going to click on these three dots that are available, and I'm going to click on say duplicate visual. So what it is doing is it's just replicating that. And here I'm going to, in this visual, I'm going to make the modification. So I'm going to, at the top, you see the fields well, where all the attributes and the metrics are visible. So I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to drag this org name and replace in place of this item. Certainly, once the data comes in, you can see that it's only restricted to US1 business unit. And the reason being is because we have applied filters on this, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to modify my filter, and I don't want this filter org name. So I'm going to delete this filter for this, so that I know for different organizations, right, how it is performing. So they're almost all close to what it is needed. So you can see that one of the UK needs 213 units, 211, like that. But this is not giving me the correct picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to restrict to a specific item, say AS 25100 for this criteria, right? Because that's when I would know what is that I'm looking for. So let me just restrict in this case for a specific item number. So I'm going to click on this item, add filter. And here I'm going to, as I said, I'm going to, it's again fetching the data set real time. And once I get that options, I'm going to first restrict it to the item that is there, AS 2500. So now I know that what is my quantity for one item. So you can see that this is the item that is there. So I'm just going to say order quantity by org. and I'm going to specifically say AS25100. So this is just giving me a perspective of the specific item which I'm interested, because that's my the top item that I'm going to look at. So I want to make sure that I'm not dealing in the fulfillments, or I'm able to consume that, meet the demand and all of that, right? So I want to really foresee on that. So I've created a sample set. Now I want to add a second data set, which is my supply and demand, and look at how things are progressing, right? So for that, I need a data set. So let me just click on this plus sign over here, pencil sign, and see whether my data set is available. So I'm just clicking on this add data set, and you can see that I don't have my supply and demand data set over here. So the first thing that I'm going to do is let me just come out of it. So you can see that by default in QuickSight, the auto save is on. So as you make the changes, it gets saved. So we don't need to worry about any issues whether you've saved it or not. So I'm just going to close this, and I'm going to come back to my manage data set over here, and I'm going to click on this new data set and connect to my Redshift instance, which is there at the bottom, and click on create data set. And in this case, I'm going to pick my my supply and demand data set, which I just created earlier. So I'm just scrolling down, and you can see that there's a supply and demand. Again, I'm going to click on this edit or preview data. Just I want to, because before doing any analysis, I usually want to really look at the data, and understand. So I think this is the data set that is there, which looks good. And I'm just going to rename this as supply and demand data set. So I'm just going to save this because I don't want to visualize yet. I want to add this into the existing analysis which I created. So I'm going back to my home page, and I have this analysis called sales order dataset analysis. So I'm just going to click on that, which should bring up to my earlier screen where I have this data. So here I'm going to just again come back here and click on this data set and click on add data set. So now you can see that my supply and demand data set is available. So I'm just selecting that data set, and it should automatically be loaded. So now you can see that there are two different data sets that are available. The one which we created earlier, the above one, which is the sales order data set, and now we're going to actually look at the supply and demand data set, right? So I'm going to click on that. So here, the first thing, right, first aspect that I want to look at is my the weekly demand and weekly projection, right? How it is going on, right? So let me just click on week, and let me just click on my total demand, my projected availability, right? And you can see that weekly it is showing this, and you can see that there's a different there's a line graph that is being picked up by default based on the data set. So let me just change that to a stacked area so that it gives me better visibility. And you can see that this is how the data is being projected. So rather than week, let me change it to a monthly, so that it gives, because I'm the above reports I was looking at for the entire month, right? So let me look at on a monthly basis how it's being projected, right? So let me click on the fields well over here, and here against the week, what I'm going to say is aggregate, and I'm going to pick month. As simple as that. Now it is already grouped by month, and you can see that the month is being visible. And I'm going to just rename this title, saying that okay, demand versus availability by month, right? So I'm not really looking at, if you want, we can also restrict to a specific item. So because I think we were focusing on the item. So let me just apply a filter on the item. So I'm going to click on this item over here and say add filter to the field. And here I should see the same, I should see an item because I'm focused on one item, which is AS2500. So let me just apply filter on that. So on the left side, I see this item. So I'm just scrolling down, click apply. And now you can see that for that specific item, you would see what is my demand and what is my availability. So let me just look at this. So you can see that these are the quantities that are there. I'm just looking at the quantities over here, total demand and availability. And just from a look and feel, I think the legend doesn't really look good on the right side. So let me just change that view a little bit. So I'm just clicking on this option over here, and I'm going to click on this legend and say I want to display at the bottom, which gives me a bigger picture on the visualization. So I'm just closing that. So now I have, for this item, I have the demand. I want to look at, for this item, for the same item, I want to look at all the different stages. Okay, how it is processing in my work order, looking at whether is it in transit, do I have anything in receipts or anything of that nature, right? So I want to really look at that perspective by on a weekly basis for this one item, right? So I'm just, first thing is I'm just uh, rather than duplicating, right, let me just create a new visualization. So at the top left corner, you can see this add option. So I'm just clicking on that and selecting add visual. And here, I'm going to select this item. And for the item, I know what I'm looking for. I'm looking for what is my what is my backlog. I will start with that. What is my sales? Do I have anything in transit? Do I have anything in my planned orders, right? Availability, requested quantity. I'm just selecting all the metrics that are available and by week, right? So the moment I do that, you can see that it is just fetching the data real time and it's trying to present it out. So I know that I want to restrict for this one item, look at it because that's my focus area as of now. So let me just click filter and click select this item and say add field to the filter option over here. And here I'm going to select again the same item which was there, AS25100. And what it is going to present me is for that one item bi-weekly how my quantities are varying. So you can see that for the same item by week, every week, this is my backlog quantity, this is my sales quantity, this is my in transit. So at the different stages of the where the item is, right, or what is the quantity is. So it gives you a perspective, and based on that, you can take a decisions as to okay, if there is a lot of stuff, whether you can really fulfill or are there any delays in fulfilling to the customer, right? So you can do all those analysis. So let me just do a change on this. So I'm going to say order full or item fulfillment. So because it's going to give me the perspective of that, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I feel comfortable with this. I want to share this with a wider audience. So I'm going to click on the share option at the top, which is basically publishing this dashboard, whatever I've created. I'm going to say here, maybe supply and demand for by item, right? Because I think that's what we are looking at. So let me just click on the publish. And you can see if people who are already registered to the same account, right? You can start sharing over here. So I can just share, click on the name, and it will automatically come over here. But right now, I'm not interested in sharing at this point because I want to really look at it and understand, make sure I feel comfortable. So, but you can see that I've just created a simple data set based on my sales order. So first, I'm looking at what are for the current month, what are all the orders which are available, or all the items that are available, and what is the quantity that needs to be fulfilled. And I've just taken one specific item in this case and looked at by different organizations how it is being fetched. And then I'm looking at my supply and demand, whether I can really meet over that. So you can see that this is my supply and this is my demand, and based on that, I have more inventory in availability. So I have more items, more quantity, which I can definitely fulfill. But if there is any delay, right, I can also look at the future perspective as I'm projecting, right? I can look at it and see, okay, am I able to replenish my inventory or not for this specific item, right? So I can look at this trend and take necessary measures. So in this way, we are able to look at a problem statement that Srinivas has already mentioned, looking at an orders, looking at specific items, and as items changes, right, you want to look at what's going on, and we have done it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to also showcase what we have already done for different customers. Let me go back to my home page, and I'm going to showcase a dashboard which we have already created, which is the supply chain dashboard. And here, similar to what Srinivas has already talked earlier, so here we're looking at by category initially, what are how my variation is, and you can look at this by month, by organization, and try to take decisions like is there a uptake in specific product categories at one go, and maybe the next week is there a change, right? And based on that, how you're going to fulfill that, right? You need to look at those aspects. So that's what you're doing. You're looking at different stuff. You're looking at supply and demand by weekly basis, make changes. Are there any delays in your fulfillment by specific category? You're looking at where the orders are there. Is it there in transit? Do you have any open orders which you're planning for based on the fulfillment and all of that? So you were looking at that. What is your on-time delivery? How is your backlog by specific customer, and look at specific details, and how is your on-time delivery percentages, right? So similarly, supply by week and all of that. So what we have done is a sample of a subset of what you are actually seeing over here, but just taking a problem statement, trying to go through that and making sure that you are actually getting some meaningful insight out of that. I think that's it for today. Srinivas, over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Praveen. It was a good brief demo of how we have loaded data into Redshift and how we've used QuickSight to kind of show a sample dashboard. So as you can see, I mean, this is a brief overview of taking some of that information that we have been able to collect and aggregate and build a dashboard. So, and in real life, I think it's definitely more useful to see this information more as applicable for your customer as applicable for you yourself, and see where the gaps reside in the fulfillment process. Now, it is, I think what we have seen is there is a lot more information that have to be captured, and we have kind of prepared that upfront. But as a real implementation, you would have to kind of go through the extraction process and aggregate some of this information in order to view this in a form of a dashboard. So I would kind of, at this point, invite Audrey to talk about the next steps.
All right, I'm sorry, guys. A little bit of mute action happening. Okay. What I was asking is if you could hear me, so that answers my question. All right. So in terms of next steps, the series has been intended to help guide the process through different applications within Oracle, leveraging AWS as a tool. So from a team perspective, you have been, I should say, introduced to some really stellar folks from our side, Srinivas and Praveen being two. So reach out to us, and we're offering currently more of a free data analysis to walk through the initial aspects of this and to see ways that you can start to derive that business insight quickly. And then apart from that, do tune into the remainder part of the series as we enter into more of HR from a module perspective. And then lastly, more of a hands-on lab just to get you that exposure. So thank you, Srinivas and Praveen. And then just wanted to take a couple of minutes before the half hour to actually look at questions that came in. So with that in mind, let's see. So first question, why do we need to load data into AWS Redshift if we can use the standard reports in OTBI?
Let's take that, Audrey. So, so as we have mentioned, when we looked at the standard reports from Oracle, I mean, most of these are operational reports. They focus on specific extracts of data from Oracle Cloud applications. And in order to derive meaningful insights from the data, we would have to understand how the data, different data sets integrate and derive KPIs, identify, apply formulas, and then kind of identify gaps in the process itself. So, like say, for example, if you're trying to identify what's my fulfillment gap, then I have to collect information from my inventory for on-hand balances. I have to collect my work order completions. I have to collect my procurement, what I'm going to receive or what is going to be fulfilled by the supplier. I have to collect all this information, do that aggregation, collect and kind of merge all those data sets. And as the volume of data in most of these applications is going to be huge, and using and trying to process all that information readily in a timely manner is going to be challenging. So taking all of this together, I mean, AWS Redshift enables us to process the data faster and generate these, process the data faster, not only for loading, but also generating the KPIs that we can use to leverage the insights. So I think that's primarily the reason why it helps in kind of collecting all this information, aggregating and displaying it in a way that makes it easily consumable by the users.
Okay, thank you. Praveen, any additional comment?
Yeah, I think the only one more, I just want to add one small aspect is, as we have seen in the demo, right? You can certainly see that from an OTB application, if you're really looking at huge data volume, right? It's cumbersome and it's actually a bottleneck within the source system. You don't want your source systems to be stuck with all these things, because there's important stuff that has to happen. You need to have those regular transactions and all of that to happen, and you need separate data warehousing, specifically something like Redshift, where you can do all these analysis, right? So as Srinivas mentioned, I think I just want to add on that.
Okay. All right. Well, looking at the clock, just a couple of minutes. Well, one more question. What approach was used to load data into AWS Redshift?
Sure, Audrey, I can take that. So,
Okay.
in this case, there are multiple options that are available from the OTBI perspective or ERP Cloud, where it is. And from a demo perspective, what we have done is we have just loaded the data rightly into S3 bucket. But within the ERP Cloud, you also have an option where you can directly load the data incrementally into an S3 bucket or cloud storage, and from there you can actually load the data back into Redshift. So there are different options that are available, but primarily we have utilized the ERP Cloud connectors to make sure that we load the data into an S3 bucket, and from there create the necessary metrics and KPIs into the warehouse.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys.
Audrey,
We'll
excuse me. It's Carla. We do have someone who's raising their hand. I'm going to see if I can just let them get off of mute so they can ask a question. Is that okay?
Okay. Absolutely. Please do.
And Srinivas, you may need to unmute him.
I can probably do it. Let's see.
Okay.
Okay. I think talking is now permitted.
Okay.
If you would like to go ahead and speak.
Yeah, hi, this is Yajwender from Dubai.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi.
We are using Oracle apps and with the different modules. We have the lot of data. It's since from 2009. So we are facing the same issues to get the data to any other system. It's taking a lot of time for synchronization and doing the extracting the data. Yeah, my purpose is solved like with this one. I can extract within milliseconds and seconds. It's good. Millions of data it's coming.
Yep.
And actually, my question is there any possibility for the incremental data? You answered that one.
Yep.
That is okay. And it's moreover like a Power BI where we can create the data models and we are presenting in a visualization, right? So my question is there any possibility? See, now what we are doing only the presenting the data.
Yes.
Whatever we having, we are just putting our logics together and we are just presenting the data. Just I need to know where we can analyze the data, like what if scenario, if I am doing something, how it is impacting my demand, how it is impacting my stock inventory or something. Can we do with this one or any possibility?
Yeah, so I can take that, Srinivas, initially. So, Yajwender, like what we do is So once the data is there, I think the first important aspect for any analysis, right, is the data volume, not the volume itself, but the accuracy of the data, right?
Exactly.
So you need to make sure that you have you have a lot of data sets that's available where you can start analyzing, and I think that's where Redshift definitely solves that option, where you have loaded the data and you have that, and you can see that we have loaded very quickly, right? So that is the first take, right? The
It's
second take is
a major issue with any of the database actually facing in this ERPs.
yes.
Everywhere this is the same problem.
Yes, we understand that. So once the data is available, right, then the second aspect is what you just mentioned is different KPIs and different metrics. So if you look at what we have shown earlier, right, that's what we are talking about. We have taken a specific item where we are looking at, okay, how my orders are coming across for the current week or current month, right, or maybe futuristic, right? If you have orders, you look at it, and is there a problem in my supply chain, right? Again, we just because of the demo and the time frame that we have, we just loaded a sample information, supply and demand. But for your use case, right, if you have supply data which is correlated to the item, right, and most of the ERP applications have that, and then you can start analyzing and see what is really impacting and what are the next steps that you have to take in, right? So it is, I would say the analysis can definitely happen. It's just that the different data sets and the relationships within that, if you're able to load that properly, accurately into a Redshift like a data warehouse, then your analysis is more about looking at that and trying to create a dashboard which you can automate that for different purposes is what we see.
Okay.
And this is not something new. We have seen that across different customers where most of the customers.
Actually, in ERP and supply chain modules are anywhere in the market where it's a sales and demand and everything is there. The problem is we can analyze the previous data, but how we can optimize the data. Okay. The thing is, if I want to change based on the some item cost, I will say for example, if I'm changing any item cost, increasing with 1% or 2% in the future months, so how it is impacting my inventory valuation, how it is impacting on my revenue, like that's something I'm actually looking for.
Very good question on that, Yajendra. So what we have done is in one of the customers, right? I think it's the same aspect which we looked at it. So we have done price list projection based on item. So you have to create. So in this session we haven't covered that, but what you have to do is you have to create a specific models so that you're actually presenting it out. Okay, based on different price changes, how is my margin or the ROI is going to impact, and based on that you can do those kind of assessments. So we have done for a specific customer where they were looking at the projection of the cost and how it is impacting the supply or how it is impacting the margin calculations. So not in this, but yes, it can be done. It's just that you need separate modeling for that. You need to look at more from a prediction algorithms, specify your needs, look at what are the parameters that you have to pass across, and make sure that the prediction is as close to as what you're really looking for, right? And once you come up with that model, you implement it, and then it's just the rest is just automating those aspects.
Yep. Perfect.
All right. Praveen, yeah, thank you guys. I was going to say, there's a lot more conversation to be had, so feel free to reach out to myself. You have the contact, and we can get you in contact with Praveen for more discussion. But thank you all, and really do appreciate the question. So just in light of time, to recap, we hope that you learned how data warehousing can help to unlock the Oracle supply chain data. And so looking forward, next week's webinar will be similar, but focused on human resources and adding a bit of the visualization to that arm, leveraging the AWS products. And again, we thank you for your time. The webinar itself will be next Thursday, same time. So Praveen, Srinivas, as always, very appreciative of the two of you. Everyone else, thank you for tuning in, and we hope that you stay safe and look forward to having you join us alongside the journey next week. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great week ahead.